All right, welcome back, everybody. Mr. Davis wore his wonderful cowboy hat. I didn't have another hat here at school, but I did have this. I know you're gonna have a hard time taking me seriously. Mr. Davis apologized for his hat. No apology for the black hat. No apology for this, but I am done with it. Okay. So I want to just review a little bit because there was a lot of information that Mr. Davis went over. Great job on all that stuff. We can go through this, but I just want to kind of take you through hearing a little bit just as a quick review. So this is called the pinna sound, and your ear is designed to kind of funnel sound down through this auditory canal, hits the tympanic membrane right here, which is your eardrum. By the way, tympanic means drum. If you ever hear a symphony and it goes boom, 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 that's called a tympany. So the tympanic membrane is a drum. It's your eardrum. And then it goes hammer, anvil, stirrup in that order. My stupid mnemonic is I has hearing. HAS. I has hearing. Hammer, anvil, stirrup. Stupid, but some of you will go, I remembered because of that stupid mnemonic. We're going to talk a little bit more about the semicircular canals coming up today. But remember these don't have anything to do with hearing, and they have everything to do with balance. And then we go to the cochlea. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And let's just take a look here at this slide because it really helps. So it gets down to the auditory canal, hits the eardrum. You has hearing, hammer, anvil, stirrup. And then it goes right here, boom, boom, boom. And there's something right here called the oval window. And the oval window is like a telegraph operator, do 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 do, and then it creates. I pointed at the screen. It creates that, as Mr. Davis was talking about. There's fluid in here, and this basilar membrane has all these hairs, and the fluid is moving the hairs, and the hairs are what transduce vibrations into ones and zeros, into electricity that goes to your auditory cortex. Okay, so again, that's just a quick review going through that stuff so that you kind of remember. And then, Mr. Davis also talked about the ossicles. The hammer, anvil, stirrup you guys hearing are called the ossicles. It's because os means bone. Something that becomes ossified becomes hard like a bone. So ossicles, os means bone. And then the last thing I want to talk about as a review is Mr. Davis talked about how you rub or you shake something in order to kind of block that pain. And there is it's not literally a gate as Mr. Davis said, but there is a block in your spinal column that if you can get those fast, thick fibers in there fast, you might be able to block some of that pain. So that's why we shake. Because think about it. If you hit your thumb with a hammer, why would you shake it? You should not touch it, but we rub it and we shake it in order to try to get those fast, thick fibers. So here's my stupid mnemonic. Next time you stub your toe, just go thick and fast, thick and fast, thick and fast. I know it's dumb, but you're rubbing it or you're shaking it or you hit your knee on something, you rub thick and fast, or fast and thick, doesn't matter. But it's just a mnemonic to help you remember that those fast, thick fibers are the ones that you're trying to activate to get in the way of those pain signals. Now we're getting into a sense that really the test doesn't talk a lot about. It's not a super important one, but I just want to make sure. Just because the test doesn't talk about it doesn't mean that we don't need to talk about it because it might be on there. Gustation is your sense of taste. That's where we get something that is disgusting, is distasteful. Nothing is ever gusting. It should be. You should say, if you're eating something wonderful, this is gusting. Sorry. So on your tongue, you will see you have this papillae. I don't know how it's pronounced, but you can see it right here. I tried to look it up. I saw it, but it didn't make any sense. Okay. But you have these taste buds down kind of underneath. Now, I want to talk to you about taste buds because here's what's interesting. We'll get to that in a minute. You can see these gustatory cells right here. How can you, if you were like me when you were a kid, you got broccoli or something you didn't like, you plugged your nose while you ate it and swallowed. Now, how does that block the taste buds? How does your nose block your taste buds? We'll talk about that in a minute. But your sense of taste is actually pretty basic. It just goes to those taste buds there. If you've ever seen a map of the tongue where it says sweet is here and sour is here, complete BS. Not true. There's no truth to it at all. You have taste buds all over. And in fact, I think on the next slide, you're going to that's kind of interesting. There are 5 basic tastes: sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. And some of you are like, umami, what's that? It's a richness, it's a fullness. It is really less of a flavor and it's more of a feeling. You can get umami from MSG. That's why a lot of Asian restaurants add MSG to food. You can get it from mushrooms. You can get it from tomatoes. You can get it from steak. It's that sense of richness and fullness that you get from a good piece of sushi. It was really kind of a Japanese flavor that we have used that term to say there is a fifth sense that we pick up from our tongue. And I already said the tongue's taste map is largely a myth. And then I think the tongue is going to come up. But the difference between taste and flavor. Taste is on your tongue. Flavor is in your nose. It's called retronasal olfaction. And we'll talk about the olfactory bulbs here in a minute. Olfaction means smell. And retronasal means instead of going forward, it goes retro, backwards, up through your nose and out. So here's what I want you to think about here when it comes to retronasal olfaction. If you've ever eaten something really good and you go, like that, you're not moaning because well, maybe you are because you're having a wonderful experience. But really a lot of it too is you're moving air through your nose because you taste it better. In fact, chewing with your mouth closed, you taste things better than you do chewing with your mouth open because you're getting more air out of your nose. So taste is on your tongue, flavor. And think of, if we only have 5 tastes, how do we get the difference between bananas and strawberries and asparagus and steak and all these other things? It's because there are a lot of sensors in your nose that combined with your sense of taste give us this fullness, this richness of the flavors that we eat. And again, sugar doesn't smell sweet. Think of the difference between taste and flavor. If I gave you a bowl of sugar and you smelled it, it wouldn't smell the way it tastes. So taste is on your tongue, flavor is in your nose. Sugar doesn't have flavor, it's taste. It's on your tongue. And then citric acid, that is bitterness. MSG is umami, sour. Citric acid, that's like lemon. Caffeine is that bitterness. Sodium chloride is another name for salt, NaCl. Okay. And if you want, that's just disgusting. The fact that any of you have ever French kissed, you should just be disgusted at this point because that is just one ugly organ right there. But you can see all the papillae right here. And those aren't technically taste buds. They're actually kind of underneath, as you saw in the previous slide. Pretty basic, very simple. And it's got to be basic because without flavor, if we didn't eat, we'd die pretty dang quickly. I mean, blind people can survive, full lives, but if you can't eat, if you can't taste, that's a big problem. And then we get to smell. It is the only sense not routed through the thalamus. That's really interesting. So every other sense gets routed through that part. Now, why is that? Well, really, when you think about it, if we look at evolutionary psychology, if we put something in our mouth that is poisonous, it's going to kill us right away. How do we know it's poisonous? How do we know food is rotten? Because we smell it. You go to put something in your mouth and you smell that curdled milk and you go, whoa, 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 better not do it, right? It is really the most important way to save us from just dying. So we don't have time for things to be routed throughout our brain. It really is the simplest, and it's right there into our emotional system too, so that we never forget. Smell is crucial. And I talked about how taste is important. Really, smell is more important than vision in the very, very basic sense. If you think of the very basic animal, if they can't smell, they're going to put things in their mouth that kill them, right? Olfaction, as we talked about, retronasal olfaction is how we get that flavor, not taste, but flavor through our nose. And that's what it's called. And then we have these olfactory bulbs that we are going to look at. It should be right here. Must be on the next slide. But the olfactory bulbs is where smell occurs. And then we're going to watch a little video maybe later on if we get the chance about pheromones. And pheromones, we're giving off pheromones all the time. They did an experiment in this video that we might show where if I wear a t-shirt for a couple of days and somebody else smelled it, they can smell things that they can't necessarily register. let me give you an example. It's kind of hard to explain because you don't notice you smell pheromones. You ever notice dogs smelling each other's butts? That they're smelling for these are signals that are sent out about sexual capacity, sexual readiness. We give off pheromones when women give off pheromones when they're ovulating. All these different things. We pick these up and we don't even recognize them. They're not really on the test very much, but it's something that you might want to take a look at and research on your own. And then this is the last slide I'm going to do, and I'm going to let Mr. Davis take us home. This is super, super simple. It looks a lot more complex than it really is. So you have right here this mucus layer, right, in your nose, and you see it's right there in your nose. So we got this mucus layer, those are the boogers, right? And then you have these little cells that pick up, so things get trapped. And by the way, smell is just molecules. So sound is waves in the air. Smell is a molecule that hits your nose, something that just is like sulfur. You smell it, you're like, ooh. So it's a molecule that gets stuck here in your boogers, gets into your cells right here. We've got these axons. We talked about that earlier in this unit. They just head right up here to your olfactory bulbs. Pretty simple, a heck of a lot more simple than vision. And then all they do, you notice, so here they are. Here's the top of your nose right there, the inside of your nasal passages, and it just goes right there. It hits right into your brain. And it's right there where your emotional center is. So if you smell fresh baked cookies or the smell of pine trees, and it takes you back, and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm right there again. Well, that's because smell is such an emotional part. It's not routed through the thalamus. It goes directly into our brain. In fact, it goes so directly into our brain that we find that people who, like if there's a coal miner who's been smelling coal and they weren't wearing masks and they were smelling coal their whole lives, we can find little bits of coal actually inside their brain. Our sense of smell is so close to our brain. That actually things sometimes travel there. Smell is super important. Okay, I've already got 11 and a half minutes. I'm sorry I go so long. All right, Mr. Davis, take us home.